Hello.
Morning. Well, we had a few more people signed up, but it looks like they may join us as we present here. So I think we should start since we scheduled this for 10 a.m. So I would like to welcome all of you on behalf of Sharon Patrick, who's the data resource manager for the West Virginia Clinical and Translational Science Institute, and myself, Kent Ripplinger. I'm the database navigator for the DaCCoTA. And we'd like to welcome you to the National COVID Cohort Collaborative, otherwise known as the N3C presentation today. And this is part of a planned monthly training session, if you will, that rotates between the DaCCoTA cores. So we'll get going with kind of the goals for today. What we'd like to do is just kind of describe what the N3C is. We'd like to talk about the benefits it may have to your research. Also how to access the data in the Enclave. There's quite a process that's involved, and we'll talk you through that. And we'll look at the analysis tools that are available in the N3C, and then provide some examples of the N3C research in action. So the question we always seem to come up with is why should investigators use the N3C to answer their research questions? So I think we'll go through some of our rationale anyway. One of them is it is the largest limited electronic health record data set in the history of the United States. So you can see from the stats that are listed on the slide, there's a vast amount of data available for you to dig into and hopefully answer some of your research questions. There's a total of 19.4 billion rows of data in this data set. So lots of data available. We wanted to also let you know how this data gets into the Enclave and where it's coming from. So you can see from the map that's displayed, there are 76 contributing sites as of today. This does change, but that's across the nation. And the data itself gets refreshed once a week. And currently contains somewhere around 16 million anonymized persons. And the data goes back to January 1st of 2018. So it's not their full electronic health record history, but it does provide a little bit of a historical context. The data in the Enclave, it's not pulled for all patients from contributing sites. It's all COVID positive patients, as well as twice as many demographically matched controls. So just a little perspective, it's not necessarily a random sample, as there are only particular data partners contributing. It's not every institution in the United States. But I do also want to let you know it's very dynamic data. So it can and does change. As you can see, currently we have 76 contributing sites, and these sites have grown. I think when I first started a few months ago, there was like 71. So the data gets refreshed, more sites are added. So the data does change over time. But you can always access older data if you needed it in your research. Who are the patients? Well, the goal is to identify lab-confirmed, suspected, and possible cases of COVID-19, and then demographically match them to age group, sex, race, ethnicity, those cases to the controls that have tested negative. So it's at a 1 to 2 ratio cases to controls. I've just been kind of getting a grasp on this myself. So they have the COVID positive group, and they demographically match them to others based on age, sex, race, ethnicity, 1-to-2 ratio. But if you're interested in learning more about the phenotype, you can, I don't know, Sharon, if you want to just, do you have that site handy? But there is a
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. But you, there is a description of the phenotype on the website. And Sharon will add that to the chat. Sorry, I should have had that. I do think, you know, we need to talk about the access, accessing the data and how it's kind of the access, the data levels that are available in the N3C and the description of the data. So the first thing we'll look at is the level of data that you can request access to. So the first one is considered level 3 data. It's the limited data set. It's the most complete data available. And what it includes is the dates of service and patient zip codes. The next level of data is called the de-identified data set. It's referred to as level 2 data. And what that does, the difference between the two levels, is the dates of service have been randomly shifted and the zip codes have been truncated to 3 digits. The dates of service, just as an example, they're shifted on a per patient basis. So for a given individual, all of their dates will be shifted by the same amount, meaning if you were wanting certain data, you could, it is still possible to go into the data and identify everyone who had a COVID positive lab test, and then within 10 days may have ended up in the hospital or something like that. So, and then the final level, level 1 data, also known as synthetic data, that's data derived from level 3 data. It's run through a statistical model. It's not actual patient data. I'm not real sure how they do that, but I just know that it's not actual patient data. Sharon, I don't know if there's anything more we have to add to that, but
yeah, no, I don't think so. It's you know, it's computed within the harmonization process, so I'm not exactly sure. Most folks use the limited and then the level 2. I've actually never worked with a researcher who used the synthetic, so it's not used that often.
And then the eligible users we can look at. So, you know, level 3 data, any researcher from a US-based institution is allowed to request access to that level. Level 2, the de-identified data set, that includes not only US-based institutions, but foreign institutions. And then level 3, citizen scientists, along with the other 2 groups, could request access to the data. And the next one are the requirements to get to the data. And this is kind of the big, I guess, piece to this chart. You can see, starting with level 3 data, the requirements that are listed to access the data. The biggest thing with, and I'm not going to go through every one of the requirements, we're going to talk about most of them as we go through the presentation, but you'll notice the big thing between level 3 and level 2 data is the IRB determination letter. So this requirement is the N3C requirement. So it's not, you might have to, your institution might have a requirement that if you want level 2 data, you might need an IRB determination letter. For example, we're working at the University of North Dakota with an investigative team in the N3C. Even though the N3C does not require IRB approval for level 2 data, UND does. So we had to complete an IRB for the project we're working on for level to access level 2 data. So it's based on your institution. And the good thing is Sharon and I are here to help any investigator out in this process. So we're able to walk you through these steps and give you a successful experience in the N3C. Anything we need to add to that, Sharon?
No, sir. I think you captured everything.
All right. So before we begin, we're just like to access to go through the process of getting to the data. There are some prerequisites that are required. And we're going to go through and briefly talk about each one of these things. But the first one is a signed data use agreement. There's some training that is involved that you have to complete before you can access the data. And then we're going to go through kind of the onboarding, a brief overview of the onboarding process to get you registered with the N3C. So we'll start with the data use agreement. The purpose of the data use agreement is sort of the agreement to behave when you're utilizing the N3C. And you can see the list of kind of things an investigator would agree to on the slide. But it is an agreement that's in place between the institution and the N3C. So anybody who is associated with the institution is covered under the data use agreement. So you can see from the list, the N3C was created for COVID research only. You agree not to try to re-identify people or institutions, populations. You are not allowed to download or capture raw data from the N3C. That includes, in a presentation like this, I couldn't show you a screenshot of raw data from the N3C, or even if you're video recording a call or something like that, you couldn't include raw data in that call. And we do have another level of security that's listed here. Is much of the activities you do within the Enclave are recorded and can be audited. So all those things you kind of want to know up front. But they do actually want you to publish and attribute to the N3C. So it is, they also include that, plus the fact that the results that you disclose to the N3C, it's for the public good. And you can see from the link in the slide here, you could actually go and see which institutions have data use agreements. We just had the Fargo VA complete a DUA. So we got another institution from North Dakota added on. So you can see also that UND, NDSU, USD all have DUAs in place. Okay, so we thought we would probably give you just a quick overview of how this would work for creating and registering an account with the N3C. And this is typically where I would help you with this process, but it's as simple as going to the website listed in the slide, clicking on access the Enclave. And when you're creating this account, you're doing this for really two things. You're getting access to the data Enclave, not so much the data yet. And you're also getting access to team drives, which include Google Groups and Slack for communication purposes. So you would click access the Enclave. You would click create an account. And this is part of the registering your information with the N3C. And when you create the account, it's important that you register with your institution email, because what they do is they use your institutional email and match it back to the data use agreement. And then that, somebody's going to look at that and then give you the access you need. And once you get access to the account, and I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but once you get access to the account, you'll get an email that gives you login instructions and so forth. So registering, you click create an account. And one of the things you will see when you create the account is a registration checklist. And this is where it kind of gives you the information on, first, you better have a data use agreement in place, which we do. And then it talks about the training you would need. Probably want to set aside an hour to an hour and a half to complete the NIH training. Most investigators have the human subjects research protection training. You probably got that through CITI program, something like that. So they go through the requirements that are needed on the checklist. And to be quite honest, you don't have to have the training done up front. You do have to have the training done before you can access any of the data. So anything else with that? Okay.
No, I don't think so. I honestly didn't think that it took that long. They say that it takes an hour to an hour and a half. So yeah, I was gonna say that's what they say, but I don't remember it taking that long. But just like Kent said, it might be beneficial to set a little bit of time aside just to complete that.
Yeah, and I would agree. I was new to all this, and I don't think it took me an hour. So, well, the login options, once you get into the process of creating your account, you will use these type of login options, and most DaCCoTA institutions are going to use the InCommon to log in. And basically what that is you search for your institution to make sure it's listed with a DUA in place, and you'll find it in the list. It will remember, as you can see in the slide, it says the institution is the University of North Dakota, which is the institution I am associated with. You would click on that University of North Dakota link. It would take you to your institution's login page, and you would have to have some sort of a two-factor authentication set up. And most of the investigators I've worked with have used Duo, where you would authenticate and be able to log into the site. Now, I just added those instructions to this presentation in case you wanted to refer back to it, the InCommon accounts. And you can kind of see it. It walks you through the steps, and it says, this gives you access to Google Groups and Slack and things like that. So it tells you how long it takes. Honestly, I think it took like 2 to 3 days for most people to get an account. But if you weren't able to log in with an InCommon account, which would be uncommon, you could log in with a .gov account. Kind of the same concept. You would use your institutional email, use a two-factor authentication app like Duo. And again, this is in the presentation more for reference than anything else. Okay, so once you've created the account, now what? So what can you do now? And I kind of came up with the big fours. Okay, so the first thing you could do is you could join N3C domain teams. And we'll talk about those in a bit. You can also take advantage of the training resources and support that are available in the N3C. You can join an existing project, or you can create your own project. So we'll kind of briefly go through these 4 things next. The domain teams basically made up of clinical domain teams and cross-cutting domain teams. The clinical domain teams are more focused on clinical questions surrounding COVID-19, the impact it has on health conditions, things like that. It's more of a subject matter expert area that if you were interested in joining a team, you could be with kind of that like-minded group that have the same interests. The cross-cutting domain teams, they're they have a varied focus, applies to multiple domain teams. There's not as many of those. But if you wanted to see the entire list of domain teams, you could by going to this site. Now, the advantages of joining domain teams is you have experienced investigators who are part of these teams who have experience using the N3C Enclave. It's also an area or a place you could share ideas, see what questions are being answered right now, what kind of areas of interest people are talking about, and it's a way to collaborate with other investigators using a team science approach in your work. The next thing you could do is you could take advantage of the training and support that's available within the Enclave. They have something called office hours every Tuesday and Thursday. It's actually live support. So you could actually listen in or ask questions to somebody on the other end will help you. It's support from, I think, the people who kind of built this. Is that right, Sharon? I mean, it's
Yes, sir.
Palantir and the Logic Liaison groups that are providing the actual support. The other thing you have access to is the N3C Community Forum. And that takes place every Monday at 4 o'clock Central Time. And they give you kind of it's kind of a good way to see what's going on in the N3C, what kind of questions people are trying to answer. They provide presentations of current research and then followed by discussion. So it's a way to see what's currently going on. It's kind of interesting to see what other people or how people are using the N3C. And did I already do that? Yeah. Okay, joining an existing project. Currently, there are over 435 existing projects in the N3C that you are able to join. You could it's as simple as requesting to access the project, and then the not so simple, it's not that difficult, but you have to go through another process of filling out a DUR, which is a data use request. So I will kind of go over what a DUR is, but it's basically your way of accessing the data once you have an Enclave account. So the data use request form. Its purpose is to, well, first of all, it's all done in the Enclave. So everything you do is done within the N3C. This will describe the kind of the scope, nature of the project. It also justifies the requested data access level. So if you refer back to that data access level chart, if you were requesting access to a project that was using level 3 data, you would need IRB approval. And of course, that might be the same for level 2 data if your institution requires it. So there's a little bit of a process here. Again, that's where I would be able to help you with that. You would also need, then once you complete the DUR within the Enclave, it goes to a committee, a data access committee. They review it, and this is required for you to have approval before you can be added to somebody's project in the N3C. And the DURs are valid for 1 year, but they make it fairly quick and easy to renew the DUR. So I guess some of the helpful hints with DURs is the lead investigator can add their collaborators when they submit the DUR, which makes it a little bit quicker process for your entire team if you had a team that wanted to join a project. It does take a few days to get approval, but again, this is because of the security level. An actual individual is looking at this request, or a group of individuals are looking at the request to approve it. Now, the next thing you could do is you create your own project. There is a process to this, and the process kind of starts with the investigator submitting a project proposal to somebody like me, the site navigator, and then we go through a process to see if this is a feasible study. So the next step would be for the investigator and the navigator to work together to complete what we call a project proposal form. This is something within the CTR network that's been developed. Sharon was a big part of this process in the form. But what the form does is it gives you a chance to kind of lay out everything, like who's on the research team, what is kind of the project design, what does that look like, What kind of data elements are you going to need for your project? And we put that all together, and then we work with an N3C analyst to see if the project is feasible. Like, is the data you are looking for, is there enough data in the enclave to answer your research question, or does it exist at all? I guess, so that's a big part. And I've been fortunate enough to go through this process, so I'm understanding it a little bit better every day. So the next thing from there, if the project is feasible, then the next step would be to get IRB approval based on whatever data level is requested. This is, again, some of you are familiar with this process at your institution, but again, we're here to help you with that. Once that is completed, or in the process, we can submit a DUR to the N3C with the documentation. The DUR, a lot of the elements that you'll put in the DUR, you've already got done because it was kind of in the project proposal form. So that goes pretty quick. And then if the DUR is approved by the Data Access Committee, you are assigned a project workspace within the N3C Enclave. And in that workspace is where you will start working with your analysts to look at the data for your project. It does take a little bit of time, but it's manageable, and it's mostly because of the security levels that are in place with the N3C. Sharon, did I miss anything on that?
I don't think so. I think also the project proposal form was a way we kind of look at it also as like a contract. We're saying that we're going to have regular meetings. We really want these research projects to move forward. So we do want some outputs from using the N3C. So in addition to what Kent has mentioned, it's also just a little bit of a contract just to remind everyone that we are working on a project, and we do have meeting times set up, and that the project is viable and we're able to move forward with an N3C.
Thank you. And we thought it would be helpful, especially for you, some of you who may be more familiar with these analytic tools, to at least see what is built into the N3C Enclave, because all your analysis will take place within the Enclave. So what is in the Enclave is R and Python. Those coding platforms are fully supported in the Enclave. There's also Spark SQL, where you can work with, query your data within the Spark framework. And there's something called Contour. Something called Contour, that it's a point and click kind of a software where you can manipulate and graph data sets. And the thing to remember with analytic tools, all your analysis will take place in the Enclave. There is a way, though, to get the data out of the Enclave, but you have to go through a data download request. That's part of the process that will allow you to take. It won't allow you to take the raw data. It will allow you to take some of the analysis that you've done out of the Enclave. And the last kind of wrap up to what I wanted to share with you is just a review kind of what kind of value this would have to you as an investigator. We mentioned the vast amount of data that's available in the Enclave from across the nation. It would be a great resource for pilot data, for grant proposals. You have an opportunity to work with other investigators in a team science approach. You have access to domain teams, depending upon what you're interested in, or machine learning, statistics. And you have all sorts of training that you can acquire on these different analytic tools and software within the Enclave. And this is on top of the training and support domain teams that we mentioned earlier in the presentation. So I think there's a lot of value to investigators if there is a question that they would like answered in the area of COVID-related research. So with that, we thought that we would show you kind of how N3C has been used with some N3C in action examples. And I'm going to let Sharon kind of take this piece.
I don't recall. Did you want me to share my screen, or were you going to drive the slides?
I can advance them if you want.
Okay. All right. I guess I need to stay off mute now, don't I? So I hope we haven't scared you. It sounds kind of a little bit scary of all these, you know, of the security measures that are in place. Trust me, we will walk you through the process. Kent and I have worked with many people, and so we're happy to help you with your process through the N3C. So with that being said, N3C is definitely in action. I'm talking about the scholarly output from N3C. So the first point is the sharing health data. It's the why, the will, and the way forward. And this is from the Learning Health Systems series hosted by the National Academy of Medicine. The use of a common data model. The N3C leadership accelerated progress toward the launch of a cloud-based consortium for aggregating institutional level data in a research enclave. The use of a common data model is to support the extraction and transformation of local data to a common format to enable users a data dictionary, as well as the phenotyping inclusion factors. The second point is to improve the accessibility and efficiency of data. So the N3C endeavors to improve the accessibility and efficiency of a large COVID-19 clinical data set while demonstrating a novel approach to sharing patient-level data and enabling individual researchers to use the data for approved projects. So the N3C impact of that is a way of the future, an open science and team science partnership between researchers and the National Institutes of Health to aggregate data to support COVID-19 research. And we talked about like the domain teams and everything. So kind of looking at that team approach, and just like it's in the name, the collaboration between researchers. And so the next slide is the, sorry about that. I advanced myself over here on my side. So it comes from the first annual report of progress toward implementation of the American Pandemic Preparedness Plan. So this is published from September of 2022, and it's a report by the White House Steering Committee for Pandemic Innovation. And so those innovations are the creation of N3C, the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences, or NCATS, created the N3C to monitor and conduct research with over 15 million EHRs in near real time to inform urgent public health questions. Also, the key achievements. This report highlights a number of key achievements made throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, while also outlining priority science and technology research areas and programs that must be advanced to improve U.S. and global pandemic preparedness. The N3C impact of this is real-time monitoring of COVID-19 spread and became a critical tool in the U.S. in the response to the pandemic, providing both decision makers and the general public with timely data. And the last item to talk about with N3C in action is this article was published in July of 2022. And as you can see, I did include the links to each of these articles that I'm referencing on the slides. And so this comes from the Colorado University at Anschutz. The researchers are harnessing the power of the largest patient privacy limited data set in history. So they gained the attention of the White House. So the development of the largest national publicly available HIPAA limited data set in US history, the N3C. But their research also, sorry, I'll pop up here. Their research using the data had made the headlines and getting the attention of the White House. And we look at Paxlovid. So the N3C team has been looking into the effectiveness of the antiviral treatment Paxlovid. And coronavirus experts from President Biden's administration approached N3C leadership to tell them about the effectiveness of Paxlovid in individuals out of the hospital, the effects on the kidney, the effects of the drug on the kidney, and the rebound phenomenon of whether patients still tested positive after treatment. And then the N3C impact is that the data from the N3C helped to determine the president's administration to guide public health decisions. And there's also quite a few publications. It's on the dashboard, and we can share that link with you all. There's many publications and abstracts that have been submitted on behalf of the N3C's consortium. So there's all kinds of N3C in action in addressing current public health concerns. And so this will wrap up my portion of the presentation with just a brief overview of what Kent has described today, as we talked about what the N3C is, the benefits to your research of using the N3C, how to access the data, the analysis tools available in the N3C, and lastly, the N3C in action. So we thank you all for your time and attendance today, and look forward to working with you on your N3C journey. And I don't know if Kent, if you have some additional details from today.
Yeah, I will put this link in the chat. It's just a link to the survey that we'd like you to complete in regards to the presentation today. Also, we'd like to take any questions you might have as well.
And I went ahead and put that link to the publications in the chat for you all to review. We've had some really nice publications come out of the West Virginia CTSI that are really important, and I think will make an impact for additional or further COVID-related research. So we do thank you, and I hope that you have some questions for us, because this is all we get to talk about. We love N3C.
Yeah, I'm going to find that link also. Of course. Are you guys?
Well, and Kent, if you'd like to, I don't know if everyone, oh, okay.
Right.
Oh, you're fine. I didn't know if everyone has my email. If you have questions, Kent and I are very happy to help you. We want to work with you on your journey through N3C. We hope to see some publications out of this group. And if you need anything, we're happy to help, assist, and make those connections for you that you might need.
All right, if you guys don't have any questions, again, thanks for joining us today. And also, I'd appreciate it if you complete the survey with the link that was just placed in the chat. And have a great day. And if you have any questions on the N3C, we're here to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.